Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of We Talk Photo. I am one of your hosts, John Peterson, and with me, as always, is Mr. Jack Graham.
John, how's it going?
Going well, Jack. Happy June, and we just entered the month of June, and
It
the year's already flying by.
will be half over in 30 days.
I
30,
know it's crazy.
20,
I feel like I'm just getting started in this
yeah,
whole
wow.
year, and already it's poof. We're I'm already into 2026, getting
20,
my schedule ironed out, and yeah, it's
well, it's on my list.
yes, it is on your list. Well, today we welcome back to the program one of our favorite guests.
Yep.
Miss Rain Hayes is with us again today. Thank you, Rain, for coming back.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to see both of you.
It is. For those of you who haven't listened to our previous episode with Rain, please go back through the archives and I'll put a link to it in the show notes here. But Rain has a very unique photographic niche that she pursues, and she creates these amazingly dramatic images of flowers. I think that's what you're best known for, Rain. I think you shoot some other subjects, but it's the flowers that have really flowers and other foliage that have really kind of gotten everybody's attention, and it's a very unique style. And how long? Just give us a quick reminder. How long have you been doing this kind of work?
I would say I've been focusing on it full time for about 2 years and probably got into it a little bit before that, but I only meant to try it out one time. Like I'm just going to do a quick test. I'll be right back. And now here we are 2.5 years later, and everything else in my life has kind of fallen by the wayside. So that's where we are now.
Isn't that wonderful? You found that you weren't expecting this passion to take over your life, and
I was
here it
not.
is.
I was not.
And that is such a gift when we are given something that we're so passionate about that we devote so much of our energy to. That's a wonderful thing to find in life. So kudos to you for finding it.
I'm
Absolutely.
pretty pleased with it as I mean, just being able to find something that can take up your time and you don't have to think about what am I interested in? What am I passionate about? I hear so many people with that question, midlife trying to figure out, or even just right out of college, what do I care about? What do I want? And they just kind of spin and stay stuck. And um, I personally have never been bored for a minute in my life, but I am really grateful to have found something that kind of captures my imagination and lets me get into it day after day and not get bored.
That's a great way to go through life. I tell you, having a
Yeah.
purpose, having a mission, having a passion. Wow, yeah. Yeah, I wish everybody could find what is theirs, but we're lucky enough to have found you, and you found yours.
I think
So,
everybody has one, John. I think they just need to let themselves be open to saying, hey, I like to build birdhouses. So I'm going to learn how to build birdhouses, whatever.
I
I
think
think
that's a great point, Jack. It's being
people get in a
open
rut.
and being receptive and not being constrained by what you should be doing or what society thinks you should be doing or any of that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
just be
think
open.
that's a really great point. Just being honest with yourself and not being afraid to spend time alone, and really examine what do I like to spend my time doing. If it's reading sci-fi, then maybe there's some, you never know where that thing is going to take you. But I think whatever people are into is fine. They just have to kind of admit it to themselves sometimes, like you
Yeah,
said, Jack.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and once you do, once you sort of admit it and find it, I think there's a burden almost has been released, and it's a freedom to really
Uh,
kind of let your flag fly and just go for it and be happy.
I think so. And I mean, just backing up a second, it's not the flower photos per se that are like my passion in life. My passion in life is just to make cool stuff. And that has been true from day one, but I felt that I had to hide it for a long time, taking sick days to work on art projects and, you know, not making any money at it, maybe not being that good at it. But if you practice the thing enough, you're eventually going to get somewhere with it. And now, what I counsel other people who say they can't find time to do their art because they work full time or whatever, I say that's what the sick days are for. And as a former boss, like I'm telling you that. I'm telling you it's okay and it's normal. And you just get it any way that you can. And you don't have to be embarrassed or ashamed of it. You got to get it out there.
Yeah, and as you were saying that too, Rain, that sort of reminded me too what we are sometimes not good at is being our own best advocate of,
Yeah,
I'm taking time off. I'm taking not a sick day, but a wellness day.
exactly.
It's a mental health day. It's whatever you want to call it, but go take a day and do something fun for you. And because this journey, we're getting a little deep here, but this journey of life is it's about the journey, not about the destination or who has the most at the end. It's about the experiences along the way, and I think as we age, we all are starting to appreciate the experiences we have over material possessions or wealth or any of that stuff. It's the richness of life that
Yeah,
makes our life so rewarding.
agree.
Yeah.
And the older you get, the more that comes into play.
Yes. 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 That's very true, Jack. Very true. Well,
Anyhow,
let's. Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
I'm just going to say that, I have Rain's website in front of me, and everybody, maybe while they're listening to this, if they have a monitor or to take a look. You know, one of the things that we talk about a lot during our workshops is separating yourself from the pack and being different and being, the what I like to call the purple cow. I'll go into that now, but um, Rain, you've done that, and I commend you for that.
Thank you.
What I mean, most people who go buy equipment and decide they want to learn how to take a photograph kind of go out and do what everybody else is doing. And if you've only been doing this a couple of years, what I mean, how do you figure out that you wanted to do something in the way that you're doing it? I mean, did it come to you in a dream or just what? I mean,
I'm not the first person to shine a UV flashlight on something. I actually saw someone else's work and I wanted to try it, but I didn't I didn't share any of it at first. I didn't want my stuff to look like theirs, or I think that imitating someone is a good way to learn a technique, but you have to move on. Like
Yeah.
you can't just adopt someone else's style and grow as a creative person. Um, I think I let parts of my personality really take over in my own style of being very detail oriented and maybe a little bit just able to really focus in on things that are interesting. There are all kinds of other areas of my life where being detail oriented and super focused is like something people might criticize. But this is an area where like I'm at home, I can do whatever I want. And so I just kind of let those parts kind of go. So it developed more into what I was really interested in, which was really working on the details and kind of I feel like there's a little character, a little person or an animal inside every flower or seed. And I just want to work with each of those subjects until I find it. So as I've kind of done more of it, that style has evolved into kind of what it is now. I'm not the only person that takes pictures like this, but you wouldn't. I don't think you would mistake my work for anybody else's.
not at all.
No, your attention to detail, and that's one of the things with your photographs that always gets me is I see a lot of close up work, I see a lot of macro work, but every Like I'm looking at a photograph on your website, and every hair on this plant is in just immaculate focus, and every bit of this photograph has been executed as perfect as it could be, and I think your attention to detail really comes through in every image you put out there.
Well, thank you for
Yeah,
saying that.
yeah.
I admit if there's something wrong with the image, someone's going to see it. And if they say something to me, it's really going to hurt my feelings. I know that that comes from a place of vanity and ego, but that's part of, I guess, vanity and ego is part of what I'm putting into these images is just really wanting it to be a thing that, in a way, like it kind of puts my mind at peace to feel like this is really done. I didn't leave anything to just like, okay, I'm tired of working on this and I'm going to let these details just like not be finished, or this part is okay if it looks a little blurry or something like that. I really want it to be something that I wouldn't criticize, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm very critical. So I think that's probably how I land there, is that I'm working for someone who is just like kind of a boss with stupid standards, you know.
We are our own worst critics always. But yeah, going back to vanity and ego, the thing I was going to chime in with is that's part of being human. So we can't deny those things in our work. I mean, it's just part of being human. It's part of who we are.
That's true. Yeah.
You got started doing IR infrared work, and I think you did a course for Kelby One,
Did,
I think
yeah.
at one point, and did a little bit of IR. And then you've just recently transitioned, not maybe not recently, but over to ultraviolet light.
Right.
Could you explain what ultraviolet photography or using UV light is about?
Sure. So, in the context of, if anyone doesn't know what infrared is, there's the electromagnetic spectrum that contains all the energy in the universe, and we can talk about light as visible light that we see in the day, and just outside of that, on the red end of the spectrum, is infrared light. Infrared light is invisible. There's no color in it, but you can use it because it's bouncing off of things all the time, to make really interesting photographs, because your camera's sensor picks up infrared light really easily. And using special filters and some modifications on the camera, you can record this light even though you can't see it with your eyes. So you get these images of landscapes with like white glowing foliage and dark skies and kind of odd colors. Moving over to the other side of the visible spectrum on the purple end is UV light. That's ultraviolet. Everybody's heard of it. You can't see that, but you know what it is. It's what gives you a sunburn. It's also a black light. It's what they use to, shine on your $100 bill to make sure that it's good, and genuine. This black light makes certain things glow. We've all seen that at like a party or a club or whatever. UV light can also excite tissues and some plants to cause them to produce their own light so that the plant is kind of glowing. So these UV, the flowers that I'm photographing, the proper term for this technique is ultraviolet induced visible fluorescence, UVIVF. We usually say UV for short. That's not like totally accurate. I'm not using a UV filter on the camera. That's a different type of photography. But the UV IVF is what I'm doing. And the light that you're seeing, the glowing parts of the flowers, are not really reflected UV light. That's the plant creating its own light because of the way that the inner tissues are excited by the UV. And I'm so blown away by that.
That's
That
fascinating.
it's, yeah.
I've never
So
heard that. Is it only certain species that do this sort of glowing effect, or is it many of them?
some plants react in interesting ways and some don't. Some just absorb the UV and they just turn like really ugly colors, like they look horrible.
Mm.
It's almost impossible to tell because I think that, and I'm not totally sure about this, but I think that the components or the constituents of the tissues that are reactive to the UV are they're inside the plant. Like you can't predict which plants are going to have these components and which ones aren't. There are flowers that look like they should be really similar. They're in the same family. They're both the same color, and one might react in a very pleasing way under UV, and the other might just be a total dud. And this is why it's been really hard for me to move on from this technique because there's always something else to try. I can't just say, oh, it's all daisies look great and roses look terrible. I kind of have to test every single one because you never know what's going to happen.
That's crazy. Jack, when you woke up this morning, did you expect to be talking about plant tissue today?
When I woke up, no, not at all. But you know what? It is your stuff is just glowing. I mean, it's just amazing.
I never knew how you got that glow. I'm blown away by that effect. I did not know that. And wow.
You know,
Wow.
there's software that'll do that, but it doesn't do it the way Ray's images look here. You can put a glow on things. It's kind of like Ray. I always say that if you're out photographing a flower and you spray water on it, it's not the same as if it's real rain.
Right.
Like a
The
flower.
drops are just in the shape of the drops and the distribution is
Yeah.
obviously not natural.
And I'm using the word glow, and maybe it's a bad word. I don't know, but the glow that's on your
It's a good word.
image is so different than an Orton effect or any kind of software.
Well, because I think like if you apply a glow like an Orton, that's something that we're putting on an image. But to Rain's point, this is a glow that comes from within.
Yeah.
And it's a
John,
very
you know what I
different.
compare it to? I hate, and I don't want to get into this because this is a whole different thing. But John, this is like an analog recording versus something that's been condensed in MP3 and
Oh
everything else.
yeah.
It's the same idea.
I like that. I like
Well,
that.
let's keep going on this thread, right? So you have a place that you work in your house,
Mhm.
obviously. Do you just have do you just use a simple flashlight, or do you have like a whole studio set up in your house to do this stuff?
Well, I live in this place with these like huge sliding glass doors, and there's no way to really darken it in here, and you need a very dark room. So, I use my spare bathroom, which has no windows. It's very dark. And I just started out with a little handheld flashlight that I got off of Amazon, little UV flashlight, and was doing it handheld in sort of like a light painting way. And over time, I've kind of developed it into doing more stationary lighting. So I'll use like Platypod has some really cool gear to hold lights and things in the
Lamps and
studio.
arms, yeah.
And I use some products from some other companies, just whatever I can find. I do a lot of kind of homemade prop making because I usually want to try something out before I spend money on the gear or whatever. So I kind of play around with different setups, but right now I'm just working in my dark bathroom and usually one or two of these flashlights. And that's pretty much it. It's not a really complicated setup. There are some particularities to working with flowers. They die fast, so you have to work pretty quickly. Because they're alive, they're moving a little bit all the time. And so if you're trying to do focus stacking or you're taking forever to do your shots and you need to line things up afterwards, they might not line up perfectly. So you have to kind of work pretty quickly and try to do some corrections in post if things aren't lining up. But yeah, it's sort of one of these things that can be as simple or as complicated as you want to make it.
It's a deep rabbit hole. It can
It
be.
is, yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. Wow. So we were talking before the show, and so to do a typical photograph that we see on your website, how many? So you practice focus stacking, yes. Like, but how many images go into one of your final shots?
The closer you are to the image, the more shots it takes. The further you are away from it. So if I'm photographing the entire flower and not just a detail, the fewer shots it takes.
Right.
So I would say on the low end, probably 25. That's pretty rare. On the high end, can be up to 300. Usually it's probably somewhere around 100 to 200.
Wow.
Are you using the camera software?
Oh yeah. I am. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I use a Canon R5 and it has a focus bracketing feature. So I usually just leave it open ended. You're supposed to specify the number of shots that you want it to take and kind of give it a depth of focus parameter. I usually set the number of shots really high and just keep an eye on it and stop it when it looks like the whole thing has been photographed in focus. Because it can be a little bit hard to predict. And I'm in a dark room. Up to now, I haven't been shooting tethered. So I'm just trying to trying to look at the image on a tiny screen and just kind of doing the best I can to capture the whole image. But it can be a little tricky to guess how many images you'll need.
And do you put them together in Adobe or Helicon, or are you using any software to do that?
Yeah, I use Helicon Focus. Photoshop does a pretty nice job with focus stacking, but it pulls all of these raw files into memory at one time, and it just can't handle all of these 50 megabyte images. It can't do too many of those. Whereas Helicon can do, I mean, I've done like 500 at a time, and it seems to handle that really nicely. So that's usually it's not perfect. I'm still kind of playing with the parameters to get it better all the time, but that's my preferred software.
Yeah, ours too for focus stacking. It's kind of been the leader for years.
Yeah.
A great piece of work.
Adobe's getting better, but I don't think it's there yet. Not quite there yet.
Not yet. So you shoot 200 to 300 photographs. You stack them in Helicon. Then you bring that TIFF file into Photoshop and start working.
Yeah, I usually do the Helicon output as a DNG so that I can open the images in Camera Raw in Photoshop. The other thing I do in addition to the focus stacking is I usually need to do some exposure bracketing because the parts that glow are like wildly bright and everything else in the flower is pretty dark. It's really hard to get everything acceptable in a single exposure. So I'm usually taking a couple of focus stacks, one at a higher exposure, one at a lower exposure. And so I want to be able to apply all of the same initial edits to both of those images. And you can just set up little presets for your little temporary throwaway presets for yourself in Camera Raw, just like you can in Lightroom. But that's typically what I do. And then I'll start kind of manually combining those final two images in Photoshop.
Wow. Yeah, so you could potentially have 600 to 1,000 frames that could go into a photograph, if you're exposure bracketing, for sure.
Yeah.
Is there any special editing? I know we normally don't. I'm just sort of fascinated by your process, so I'm going into this space. But is
Yeah,
there
no.
any special editing techniques? I know with IR, there's a few special things that need to be done, but for UV, anything special, or do you just sort of treat it like a color photograph from that point forward and edit it?
I really just treat it like a color photograph. You're right. There are special steps that you have to do in infrared. That you don't have to do for any other type of photo, but your photo is not really going to be that successful most of the time if you don't do those infrared steps. With UV, it's just a regular photograph, a color photograph. There are artifacts, as you know, like from the focus stacking, and UV is not really probably the intended target or a type of light that your camera sensor is trying to read. So I think that there can be like a little bit of a halo around these glowy areas and some areas in the focus stacking that are not like, they're not perfectly aligned, that have to be manually fixed. And that can take a really long time if you want to do it the way I want to do it. But then from there, it's kind of just ordinary dodging and burning and color manipulation.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it's just wow.
How
There's not
big
a
are
lot
these
of things.
files, Rain? When you have a finished image with 300 images, I mean, how big is your final file? It's got to be huge.
Oh, yeah, they can be pretty big. I want to say maybe 5, 6 gigs. Sometimes they're a little more than that, but I'll usually like maintain the master. But then if I'm going to print or do something else with that image, I will make a copy that's flattened so it's just easier to work with. I used to work in software engineering, and in my earlier days, I was a performance engineer, which meant that I did tuning on computers to make sure that the memory and processing speed were optimized in your hard drive space. Those skills come in really handy now, so that I can work on this small solid state drive with an external drive and all of this software and make everything run fast.
If you're ever in
And have
Knoxville,
storage.
please come see us.
Yeah, tune our computers too.
Yeah, you can't just have to run out and buy a new machine every 2 years. There's a lot to manage there.
Yeah, that's for sure. Wow. So so you have a website, rainhays.com.
Yep.
Do you what do you do with your images besides just put them up on the website? We were talking before the show and talking about what we do with our images. So
Yeah, I have big dreams, John, of big dreams.
Yeah.
I do sell prints. It's not like a huge thing that I focus on. I've done some teaching more on the infrared side. I've really been a terrible professional creator here. I spend so much time like actually making the work and just relying on like other areas of my life for income, like jobs, jobs, things like that. Because look, not to get too deep, but I started doing this during the pandemic when we couldn't go anywhere. And I would just find like some weeds on the sidewalk outside my door and bring them inside and start photographing them. And so I started photographing these under those circumstances of like, I'm just photographing flowers indoors. So, well, I started doing it with infrared and then moved to UV, but I was doing these sort of like botanical portraits. And I just, during all of that going on in the pandemic, I thought, if I have something I want to make or something I want to get done, I'd really better get on it, because who knows if you're going to be here in 2 or 5 years. And I don't want to have had this whole corporate career and have that be the end of my story, that I didn't focus enough on doing the work that I wanted to do. And I've probably gotten a little bit carried away with that and neglected, other areas. So if you're out there and you look like a really polished photographer or artist on the outside and you're really not, like, I see you. And it's okay. But getting back to what I do with the images, I did have a show, like a gallery show, a group show last fall, which was really fun. I'd love to do that again. I'd love to do a book. There are some other ideas that I have in mind for licensing and collaborations and things. I just need to understand that life is probably going to be pretty long after all. So I have time to do all those things and not just the work.
Something tells me, and if I'm wrong, correct me. And we've only met here on the podcast, but and John's very much the same way. When we deal with people in photo workshops a lot, and they're out to come home with all these great photographs, and once in a while I'll slip and I'll say that, well, I don't really care about the photograph. And what I mean by that is I see what I want to do and how I want to do it, and I go right through the checklist. What am I going to do? How? Blah, blah, blah. And then when the shutter is down and I get it home and I look at it, and if it's what I wanted to do, it's been a successful thing. Believe me, when I'm not here, nobody's going to care about anything I've ever photographed. And it's really a personal thing. And I have a feeling you're kind of the same way. I think you set out to accomplish something, and when you look at the final product after 500 images and the processing time and everything, you go, yeah, I did that, and it makes you feel good. Am I wrong?
No, that's exactly the process that I go through. And then I can file it away, and I mean, it's okay to like your own work. People,
you know what?
For sure.
That's why your work is good.
Yeah.
That's the attitude. It's the people who want to, get 8 million likes on Facebook and whatever, that their stuff is just ordinary. But that's the attitude. You have bottled that. We need to figure out a way to.
We need to monetize it.
Yes. Well, it's kind of to summarize a little bit of that though too. It's the enjoyment of the craft, the art and the craft, right? It's not the output and making money from the output necessarily, but it's the fulfillment that we get from figuring out and executing a photograph that is the most rewarding aspect of what we do.
That's exactly how I feel. It's like solving a problem, and I do get really into it. I said earlier at the start that I am passionate about making things, and I've worked in all sorts of different mediums. I was a professional welder before I was in software, as a cabinet maker. I sew, all of these little things. It almost doesn't matter what the thing is. It's just that you're really like, I think we kind of have one main purpose in this life as individuals, and it's to fully express who you are, like your unique self. And if that's coming out in how you photograph, then that's a great vehicle. It's visual, everyone can see it, but it is sort of that kind of solving that problem or just kind of getting that thing just right, and then you just move on, and the next problem pops up that you can work with.
Find a new flower.
Yeah.
Find a new flower. So where does this UV IVF go from here for you?
I have a few future projects in mind for how things might evolve. I'm really not getting tired of this. I'd like to have kind of a large body of work of these. I'd like to do a series of books. There are certain types of flowers or categories of things like seeds and seed heads, dead flowers, baby flowers, or buds, whatever. There are all kinds of different ways of organizing botanicals. And sometimes I think about how cool it would be to do a book just on one of these topics or one of these areas. Um, I've always really loved flowers and anything that grows. So just I do want to continue working with this, because getting back to something that Jack said earlier about kind of not being afraid to do the thing that you actually like to do. I guess when I started as a photographer, I was doing landscapes, which I really enjoy spending my time that way. But I don't think it's really, it is really hard to stand out as a landscape photographer. And I'd always loved flowers, but I thought maybe as a subject that was too easy, or it would not be, people would not take it well or wouldn't enjoy it. So I put it off for a long time. And I'm only kind of getting around to it now. So I do feel like there's a lot of ground left to cover in the UV and beyond.
Yeah. Oh, the other point, Rain, I wanted to just commend you on. We were talking about this before the show started, but if you look at folks, when you go out and look at Rain's images, notice her attention to detail. Every detail in each image is thought out and executed as good as it possibly can be done. So excellence in every aspect of this photograph. I think that's one of the things I admire most about you as a photographer is obsessive sounds like a bad word, but you obsess the details. You really do. And I think that comes through.
I do. And everyone in my past who's told me that I need to loosen up,
Yeah.
please visit my website.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of the art and the craft is if you're so inclined, obsess every single detail, both at the time of capture and in the darkroom.
Yeah.
I mean, that's and those was it Alistair Ben that had that I think one of his taglines was care and consideration.
Yeah.
If we present images that are sort of sloppy and not well done, and the impression that we give people that see them are that we don't really care about our photographs. But when you can see an artist that is given the immense care and consideration that you give your photos, Rain, it's very obvious that you're extremely passionate about what you do. And that really comes through to me as a fellow artist.
Well, let me tell you, Rain, you might not notice, but I have a background in music, and in music, every note has to have a meaning. And in photography, I hate to say it, but every pixel, somebody said this, not me, every pixel needs to have a meaning. You're responsible for every pixel.
That's exactly right. I think a lot of people view expertise as the ability to produce beautiful, perfect image with little effort. And that might be true for some practitioners. I feel like that's extraordinarily lucky, and you only get a lot of luck if you practice a whole lot.
Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
You have to put a lot more chances to be lucky out there. Otherwise, you can take the other route and just put a lot of work into it, and not too much. You can definitely like overdo it on anything, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with the way I'm doing things now, because I do enjoy spending my time that way. I don't think I would take the magic button if there was one in Photoshop that was like, put the UV glow on the. I'm not sure I'd even try it out.
No, well, because that's part of the enjoyment, number one, but number two, that's part of where your individual voice comes through, the way the choices you make, not some software engineer at Adobe. So that to me, I mean, developing a photograph is I think very much a unique feature of each one of us.
Mhm.
And that's where our signature styles can come through.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time. Jack, do you have any other questions for Rain? Other than wow?
I'm I'm very impressed. And it takes a lot anymore to do that. There's a lot of people who have become, like Rain said, kind of accepted photographers. And I don't want to say they're cheating, but they're using uh, the equipment and the processing and everything else, especially in landscape, to have people go, boy, that's really great stuff. Boy, that's amazing stuff. But this is like the table I always talk about, John. Rain, if you came into my house, you'd see a big wooden table that was made by a person out of old barn wood. It's a craft. And I have a lot of respect for people who are craftsmen, whether they're piano players or photographers or woodworkers. And what you're doing is a craft, and you're 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 at it. I hope a lot of people hear this, because this is where a lot of people need to work toward. Good
I'd
for you.
like to be part of helping encourage people to get back to a place where they know that it's okay to enjoy doing these things by hand. Like AI is supposed to come along and take away all the creative parts of what you do. Don't let it. Like
No,
get
no.
me a robot that's going to clean my house so I can do the things that I want to do. But don't take away the parts that I like so that I have more time to clean my house. Like or whatever is the corollary. I think it's very satisfying to step back from all the gadgets and the tech and kind of find yourself in the activity and in the way that you spend the time.
I think once this AI thing, it's a new frontier right now, and I think that people who are not using that influence to produce their art, I think they're going to be highly looked at. Not
Yeah.
too far away. When people say, "Boy, somebody actually went and did that," instead of saying, "Well, put the polar bear on top of the pyramid." I think the craftsmen are going to stand out more than
Yep.
ever.
Yep,
I'll
100%.
I'll see you there on that side of things.
Yeah,
You're there already.
yeah, you are. Rain, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you back on. I really enjoyed talking with you today. Thank you.
I
Thank you
can't wait
both
to have
so
you
much.
back on, because by the next time I have you back on, you'll probably find something else. Last time it was IR.
I'll be like photographing in X-rays or something.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you both so much. It's thank you for all the kind words and just spending the time. It's really great to see you, both your smiling faces.
Yeah. Likewise.
Good way to spend the time.
All right, folks. Well, thank you for listening, making it to the end of the podcast. Check out the show notes for links to Rain's website. And with that, we'll wish you a happy day and say thanks for listening.
We'll see you soon.